Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ranch. It's morning. Luckily, it hasn't quite hit 90 degrees yet, so we're going to get started on doing all the tortoise things this morning. And that begins inside, making some tortoise breakfast. If that's something that interests you, stick around. Before we get started, we're going to take the stuff that's already chopped up and just dump it in the feeding bin. And we'll do the initial calcium dusting. As I add layers, I put calcium to make it easier to mix up. Now, I like to save these, and I put them in water, and little new sprouts grow out of it, and those are really great for my baby tortoises. So I just set these aside over here, and then I get to chopping. Now we're chopping the last thing, the turnip greens. And you might wonder, why do I even chop? Well, realistically, I could throw an entire leaf like this out there, and even a baby tortoise could sit there and pick off of it. I chop mostly for distribution purposes. Little pieces like this are easier for me to grab and put into individual tortoise enclosures. And this way I know that everybody's getting a little bit of everything when I chop this stuff up. Yeah, because even those big romaine lettuces, my Galapagos tortoises could eat one of these by themselves, no problem. When it comes to the Galapagos tortoises, compared to most other tortoises, they get relatively little of the fresh produce. Because their enclosures are so big, they got a lot of natural browse to eat. A lot more than some of the other tortoises, where the weeds have died a long time ago. They're eating weeds that are the consistency of potato chips now. In fact, where this used to be an every other day thing when I lived in Alaska, I now only feed grocery store produce once or twice a week because they do have a lot of stuff out there to eat. They have trumpet bushes that they chew on. You know, I'm always trimming up my mulberry trees or trimming up the pumpkin vine that's growing out there. So there's a lot of natural things for them to eat. So this is really, this has become not as necessary as when I was living up north and there was nothing outside that I could give them. You know, obviously variety is the best, but if you were stuck in a pinch and you can only get one kind of green to feed to everybody, turnip greens is probably one of the best greens out there. The amount of calcium in it is higher than most other things I can think of, and it's very, very low in phosphorus, so they're going to absorb a lot more calcium from this particular plant than nearly anything else. This is our desert tortoise. He's a rescue. You can see he's already been eating some of this dead grass here. So I'm going to give him a little bonus. Let him eat that. So every morning outside starts off the same way. I start down here by the barn where the galops are, and I fill up water. And while the water bowls are filling, I got to clean up the crap every morning. And you can see that Fitz here knows that a bucket means food. So even though he has tons of hay that dust devil seems to have blown around yesterday, they still every so often get a little bit of greens. Yes, they can, and they very often do eat the hay off the ground. But I give them fresh hay every other day. So it's just a matter of cleaning up the old stuff. Now that I've got them distracted by food, it makes it easier for me to do what I need to do. They have two water bowls. They have the big cement mixing pans that you probably saw up there, and they have these pretty large 30-inch water dishes that I put further out in the pens. That way, if it's hot out or they get caught out in the sun, they have a secondary source of water that's not 150 feet away. So let me dump this and rinse it and refill it. Okay, next comes rinsing out and filling this water pan. This serves multiple purposes. You see, these guys dig a lot. I mean, they are major earth movers. When I talk to people about Galapagos tortoises and anything I've read, nothing ever mentioned how much dirt these guys can push around on a daily basis. They do that because they like to get to the cooler levels, and they also like to be in mud wallows. Well, when I dump this out every usually 3 days, 2 days, depending on how dirty it gets, that's where the water comes from that provides our mud wallow. Sometimes I have to dump this out almost every day because you see this right here? This is bread. I don't put bread in the water. There's a bird called a grackle. We had them when I was in Texas. We have them out here. They're a very smart but very pesky bird. What they do is they bring their food over and they like to wet their food. I don't know if somebody in the neighborhood is feeding them bread purposely, like throwing bread out for birds, or if they just go digging through trash and find it. But every other day, or every couple of days, there's bread in the water dishes, and it drives me crazy. I can't let that sit for very long, so I'm cleaning these out a lot more than I really would like to. And that's how you fill a mud wallow. Each of those cement pans are about, I want to say 18 gallons, and I'm not just going to sit there and watch 18 gallons fill up, so I make use of the time by cleaning up the tortoise crab. The amount of waste that Galapagos tortoises create, again, something nobody talks about. I cleaned this up last night, and what you're going to see me pick up today is just from since these guys woke up a little while ago. Seriously, there's got to be like 3 pounds of shit in there. I didn't even get it all. I can see more. And while this one's filling up, I'm going to go grab some fresh hay for everybody and fill their hay buckets up. I like to buy the 50-pound mini hay bales because they're easier for me to manage, moving around and stuff. And you break off about this much, a flake at a time that comes off on its own. And I cut this in half and put it in each of their bins. These are hay bins that I bought from the Tractor Supply Company. I cut the front out for the tortoises because they're not quite tall enough to get up and over. So this particular type of hay is orchard grass hay, which I find these guys prefer over Bermuda grass, over alfalfa, I've tried various things, but orchard grass seems to work the best. It's time to go work on the radiated tortoises and the Burmese star tortoises, and then head up towards the house where all those tortoises are. So I'm just out here with the Burmese star tortoises now. I'm going to throw some of this out here for them. And you can see, like sharks in water, when they see me out here with one of these bins and a little bit of fresh vegetables, they come running. Of course, helps when they can see me. This guy's in here pretty deep. There we go. This is a transition cage, and it's meant for neutrino. Unfortunately, ants decided to move in one day when I was feeding Missouri diet, and I've put a type of poison in here that I'll show you. These little andro things. But what I did, and since she's been out of here, and it takes a couple of weeks to get rid of ants that way, you can see if you come close that I planted some clovers down here, so when neutrino does come back out, she'll have a little smorgasbord to start eating from. Now that I'm done at the barn, it's time to move up and get to all the tortoises up by the house. Let's start with the leopard tortoises. So right here we have Contrast and Multi-Scoot. You probably remember them from some of my very earliest videos back in 2017 when they were just babies. These guys were born in November of 16. And you can see they've grown pretty well and gotten pretty large. Norm is in the normal resting place for the Chaco tortoises at the base of this bugle bush. It's actually called a Tacoma Bush, and they make these pretty cool flowers that are bugle shaped. The tortoises love eating them, and they love eating the leaves. So here we have Harambe. You might remember Harambe from my very first video ever. I was building a cage for him up in Alaska. Now when we got Harambe, he couldn't walk. His tendons were malformed because of a lack of muscle use. So he could really push himself with his back legs, and his front legs barely worked. You can see now, it's been about 3 years, and there's nothing stopping him from moving out, especially when food's involved. His hands still have a slightly weird turn to them, but it clearly doesn't stop him from getting to where the food is. What you're looking at right now is my eastern box turtle pen. There's also one ornate box turtle in here, Stoner, who was a rescue that we got while we were still in Alaska. Notice that it's much more lush than anywhere else. Well, that's just because it's up against the house and it receives a lot of shade. I also rinse out the water dish, every day or two, so I'm putting a lot of water in here. And there's misters that I turn on very hot days. By happenstance, it makes this a perfect enclosure for the box turtles. So when I put the food out, I'm going to put it somewhere that's going to get a lot of shade so the tortoises can come eat it most of the day. So you see Andromeda is already dug in down here, and these do a great job of giving shade. In their enclosure, they have dandelions they can browse on. You can see there's not a whole lot of this bugle bush left from her neck height down because they like to pick at this. And whenever the flowers fall down, they eat this also. But there's still, from the amount of water I put in here when I use the water dish and watering the corners, there's still a lot of native leaves and weeds they eat. In fact, they'll even eat this stuff here. You can see they've been chewing and picking at this. So even though there's not a whole lot of green in here anymore, they're still eating what they can constantly. Tossing vegetables down here gets everybody out, and it appears Nova here thinks this is green and therefore edible. Something kind of amazing about these star tortoises. Everybody talks about how shy star tortoises are, how reclusive they are, but you can see she comes up. I've posted pictures on my Instagram of these guys just like crowding my feet. They definitely understand that my presence usually means food or fresh water. Something you'll notice about where Andromeda was, there's a fair amount of moisture down here. There's two reasons behind that. Reason one is every couple of days I'll take the hose and I'll just like water the corners because I know that's where they want to go. But also you'll see that I use mulch, and you can see just below this top layer of mulch, it's very moist down here. So not only does it retain moisture for these guys, but it also changes the soil composition. As the mulch dies, there's little bugs in here that break it down. It just turns this into a much richer, more plant-friendly soil so that I can grow more things in here. When it's not stupid hot out, there's an amazing clover patch that happens in here. And then the natural weeds go crazy in here. In a few months, I'll probably have videos of that. But you can see, yeah, stuff's growing in here. The last stop today, this enclosure is for the RedFoot Tortoises that are not Harambe. For whatever reason, these two do not get along with Harambe. I don't know if they speak a different tortoise head bob language or what it is, but they relentlessly beat the crap out of him, even though he's bigger than both of them. So I gotta keep them separated. And down here in a little water hole created by my air conditioner is Sauron. Before moving down here, I was kind of worried about bringing RedFoot Tortoises into the arid Arizona heat. But this location just turns out to be probably the best you could do here in Arizona without pumping too much water into it. A lot of this moisture is from the air conditioner, and you can see it creates a nice green area over here. And if you look at the tortoise's skin and shells and see they're in pretty good condition, even though it's Arizona. I mean, look how yellow and red his head is. His shell is in good condition, and that's all because of up here. They also eat this grass. This grass, you can see where it's been clipped and chomped and stuff. If I didn't have these guys here, all of the grass would be that tall. So that's why I don't make it too big of a production to give them a lot of food, because I know they're constantly eating this stuff. Last year, I really wanted to get my pancake tortoises outside, so I started on this enclosure. I didn't make it tall enough, I know, because Pi escaped. He was found next door on their driveway. So it's taken me a little while to get around to renovating this. So what I've done is I've gone from 2 stones to 4 stones high, and you'll see that I've made them a little rock paradise in here. They're not out here yet because I'm trying to give it time. We'll talk more about this when it's finished and the pancakes are out here in it. So the other enclosure I'm working on, this, I'm waiting on the same thing. I've got clover in here. I've planted strawberries. I've planted some tomatoes and peppers that'll start growing wild in here. And I've, again, put clover and transplanted grass in here. This is the future home of my ornate box turtles. I have Stoner, who I mentioned over there, you guys have seen in previous videos, and I recently picked up a new female. So they'll have this entire enclosure to themselves. And so here we are, 2 hours later, after chopping, mixing, feeding, watering, and it's just now cresting the 90-degree mark, and I'm ready to go inside. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.